Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Jeff, it's the first really good professional wrestling match in the history of WrestleMania. This is Tom Healy, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Jeffrey Ryan. Jeff, how the hell are you doing right now, man?
Just crazy times, my friend. We are living it day by day, hour by hour, mania on the fly, all this good stuff. And so, but a little crazy, but we're doing what we love, and that's important.
Yeah, so we had recorded a few episodes, and the last of which aired. And I realized on Monday's episode last week, we were still bragging about going to WrestleMania. And boy, did things change in a hurry. But look, man, we know that it's a crazy time in this world right now. We're here to entertain you, to talk pro wrestling. And, you don't need our medical opinion or our take on all this stuff. And, Jeff, you know what they say about opinions, right?
What do you got, buddy?
They're like assholes. Everybody's
got one.
So
right.
if you're looking for medical advice, talk to doctors, not Dave Meltzer. Okay, seriously, some of these wrestling journalists and podcasts out there, they're medical experts now. It's really amazing. So we're going to talk pro wrestling. We're here to entertain and have some fun, to share some laughs. And Jeff, let's get right into this, man.
Did you know that there's a lot of hot takes in wrestling, that the fans are somewhat opinionated? Did you know that?
Wait, wrestling fans are opinionated? Get out of here.
Yeah, did you know that? Did you know that that's a thing? I couldn't believe that. So,
oh my God. Well, I'm even thinking about, the big thing right now is, do you have WrestleMania? Do you cancel it? Do you do these shows in the Performance Center? And I'm laughing because I'm like, honestly, no matter what they do, people are going to shit on it. If they canceled everything, it's why aren't they trying to entertain people? If they can't fill an arena, they don't even want to do a show. And then they do a show, and it's like, how could they put people at risk? I mean, dude, I'm telling you, wrestling, and again, it's a vocal minority on like Twitter and stuff, but it's like, no matter what they do, they're just going to blast the hell out of it.
Yeah, nobody's ever had, and you and I were ready. I think I'm more upset too. We had to cancel our steak dinner reservation, and so, we were excited for that, and we even planned our hotel. We're like, if we can't get an Uber, it's a mile away, we can walk, and so
had it all mapped out, man.
It was a hard flight to cancel, but
there's worse things going on in the world. So I'm pumped about this episode. This is a great one, man. We're still in WrestleMania season. We're still talking our WrestleMania matches. I feel like the last few episodes we did were pretty awesome. We had some good feedback on social media. Your weekly reminder to follow us on Payoff Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, at Payoff Pod. I'm at Payoff Tom. Jeff is at Payoff Jeff. So, let us know what you think, good or bad. Tell us what matches you want to cover. We've got some good guests we're talking to right now. It seems like everybody's home and excited to be on a wrestling podcast. So we're starting to line up some really good guests, and that's exciting. So, follow us, give us those 5 stars. Thank you for your support of the show. If you're on social media more than usual right now, then, give a shout out to the Payoff and let us know what you think. So that's that. And, quickly, I'll just share the rules. We don't talk the current product. We want to bring you fresh information, and we try to have some fun. And we need fun more than ever right now. So if you're really bored and you haven't heard all of our past episodes, hit up the archives, listen to some of those ones. But Jeff, why don't you set the agenda and jump into things?
Yeah, and we've seen it. Some of you really enjoy when it's just Tom and I, and we're shooting the shit and talking about these matches. Others you enjoy when we got the guests. So we're going to keep bringing you episodes both ways, and that's what we want. So, but no matter what, whether we got a guest, whether or not it's just Tom and I, here at the Payoff, we always give you that deep dive into one match every Monday. And that's what we're always going to be doing for you. And as always, everybody knows it. We have those three parts: the build, the payoff, the aftermath. What happened before, what happened during, what happened after, plain and simple. And it's always great when we can have some of those legends and kind of superstars with us to kind of, talk us through some of that. Maybe it's the play-by-play of the match and, some of the different moves. And other times, just some stories. It's like, we like bringing those things to you as well, too. And we love hearing that stuff and some of those things that we just don't ever get to hear, any place else. And so that's always really good stuff to hear about. And so, and then after that, of course, like this match, a little bit older. And so we don't have, of course, everyone fan favorite Dave Meltzer's write-ups or, write-ups from the torch or anything like that. But, what Tom and I, we're going to get, we got a little bit to share. We found some write-ups from back in the day and some kind of retrospective things. So we've got that. And then, of course, our score. And so we got some good stuff here. And as always, we're going to bring you that great content. So, Tom, I'll kick it to you before we kind of get right into it. Like, how come you wanted to discuss this match?
So we don't have a Meltzer rating for this match?
We don't. That I could dig a little more. But.
Maybe dig a little bit more, but man, that is so disappointing because, I thought that schmuck was going to give this like 2.5 stars.
It might be out there, but 87, and when they started was later. So
look, my reasons for wanting to do the match are what you think they are. This was the first great match in WrestleMania history, great wrestling match, right? We often forget that in the first 9 WrestleManias, you could count the number of good matches on your hand. I feel like WrestleMania 10 turned the corner where, they were starting to get some newer, younger, smaller talent in the fold. Wrestling became more of a premium. Shawn and Razor in the ladder match, Brett and Owen in the opening match. And then all of a sudden, we started to get some really good wrestling. But man, those first 9 WrestleManias, there were not a ton of good matches. And if you really go back and watch the wrestling, these first couple WrestleManias, there's some really rough stuff on it. So what I love about this is not just that it was a great match, but given when it took place, it was so revolutionary for its time. What about you, Jeff?
Oddly enough, like we haven't covered either of these wrestlers, and you and I have been doing this since July.
Dude, this is our first Savage match.
Yeah. And so as much as like, this is one of those, and I think you've got a question later about the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later, but this is one, both these guys though, like arguably like some of the best in the business ever. And so, but oddly enough, not only Macho, but we haven't talked about Ricky Steamboat either. And so,
before we covered Steamboat and Savage, we've covered Savio Vega, we've covered the fake Razor and fake Diesel, Too Cold Scorpio, Canyon. Man, what the hell were we thinking?
I don't know. This is one of those, like, we don't know how it slipped through the cracks, but we're glad we're here now. So, but yeah, this is one super exciting to kind of talk about this one, jump into this one. Tom, you got any other final thoughts?
I got nothing. Hacksaw, take us to the build.
So with that being said, let's get to the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
All right, so we've talked about WrestleMania 3 before, Pontiac, Michigan. You know the whole story, 173,945 fans in attendance or whatever fake number was given. But, whatever. There were a ton of people. It was awesome. And, man, I've said it before on here. If I could go back and attend any live wrestling show in history with, like, great seats and not know what was going to happen, I think this would be the one. It would be really, really cool to be sitting in great seats for this event. So, we've talked a little bit about WrestleMania 3 on a past episode. You all know the history, so I don't want to spend any time on it. I really want to jump into the build for this match and really spend some time on it because there's just so much to cover. So what do you have for us in terms of the storyline, Jeff?
Yeah, and so this one, the two of these, this was actually a very long build, but the two of them never really got in the ring in the lead up to this. And so it really started when Savage attacked Steamboat. He was greeting some fans kind of ringside. kind of interacting as always. And then Savage attacked him. And so he pushed him. It's kind of the classic story here that, some of you may or may not know, but that's why we're telling it, of like, he pushed him over the Savage pushed Steamboat over the security rail. And there was actually an elbow shot that he gave him to his throat, and it kind of landed him on the guardrail on top of it, the classic move, like lifting them up and kind of dropping them on the ropes or the rail. But at this time, of course, before the internet, and the internet was even, not a thing, 1987 back then is when this occurred. Like, that was believable. And so they played it up that, he had, injured his larynx, couldn't talk, like, it sent him to the hospital, just all these different things. And so that was how it started. But then, had, different things that were kind of happening up to, like, at this point they had some kind of in-ring action and things happening, but the culmination was actually here at this WrestleMania. And so it was actually at Superstars when that assault happened. It was 1986. And so the build, like, to get to this, so that was November of 1986. Of course, WrestleMania was the end of March 1987. And so you did have a really long build here where things were happening. And so Steamboat was gone for a little bit too. It was actually a Saturday night main event, again, where, like, you had these things happening where they were kind of locking up and kind of getting into it and involved and all these other things. A kind of a weird angle on this one, though, is you had George the Animal Steel. Everybody remembers he would eat the turnbuckle. Super weird as a kid. Like, it would always freak me out because you didn't know. Like, I get it's a character, but he was still weird, and so that was fine. But George the Animal Steel was actually in Ricky Steamboat's corner, and he actually had a crush on Miss Elizabeth, who was probably one of my first wrestling crushes, And so I remember her growing up in the wedding and saying the "I do," or her saying the "oh yeah" to accept the marriage proposal. And so that was always good. And so George Animal Steel had the crush on Miss Elizabeth, and so Macho was with her at this time, and so you had that kind of going on. And so it just kind of interesting build. There wasn't a ton of matches, but it was a long build, and I've said before how I like these long builds, and they were, just kind of getting to it, and we just don't see that anymore. Like, even a 6 month or a 3 month build in regards to getting to a match at Mania. But these two just kind of really just not, getting along, not liking each other. The injury, like, that was pretty much the big angles that got us to this match.
Well, this year we might have a 1 year build to WrestleMania.
Yeah, no shit. Who knows what's going to happen? Yeah.
So my first wrestling cuss was Sensational Sherry.
That's an interesting choice. Really.
I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, that's why I was like quiet for a minute there. I was like, okay, whatever floats your boat, dude. Like,
so came across a couple things that I thought were interesting. So there was an interview Ricky Steamboat did where he was talking about the build to this, and he said, from the time he dropped the bell on my throat until WrestleMania, we had a 3 month build up. In other words, we had time to elaborate on the storyline. If you drill into their heads week after week and it goes for 3 months, people will have a better fond memory of why these two guys are having this blow off match. I don't think too much today that the guys have that luxury. We have pay-per-views a lot more frequently than we did back in 1987. So thought that was interesting. The other thing Ricky Steamboat talked about, and so one of the things that's legendary about this match, and I'm sure we'll get more into it once we watch the match here in the minute during the payoff, but, Randy Savage mapped out every single move in this match on a yellow pad. Okay. And so Steamboat would say, we were using the yellow legal pad and writing down steps. And it got into something like 100 plus steps. Finally, when we got the match top to bottom, we would then meet and quiz ourselves. And I would say, okay, I'm at step 55. It's this and this. Now tell me the rest of the match. And he would go, step 56 is this, and step 57 is this. We would go back and forth. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I have thoughts on this. I'll save it for when the matches started. But yes, he had a reputation for this too. And
Lanny Poffo was like, yeah, that's the way Randy always was. They He was OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Correct.
I think I have it too. So, it's all good. But yeah, it's just crazy.
When he's doing it, yeah. Hey, but we can see what we got from that, though. So it's you can't really complain because of it, though.
Well, and you may bring it up during the match, but I'll just say that so often you'll see wrestlers go, "Oh, I can't believe Randy Savage and Diamond Dallas Page, they would map out their matches ahead of time." To me, wrestling's an art form. Different people have different processes for creating art. Right? Actors act different ways, right? There's different types of acting. Some people like improv. Some people like scripted. Some people go off the script. Some people have a mapped out comedy show. Some people kind of wing it, right? And there's no right or wrong, but I hate when you'll hear some of these old timers that like bash a certain style. It's like, look, some people call it in the ring. Some people map it out. There's plenty of wrestlers, dude, quote unquote, call it in the ring. They've had a lot of quote unquote shitty matches over the course of their career. So I would never begrudge the guy for putting in all this prep. God love him for doing it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we can see what the results were from that. And so it definitely was worth it. I
had one more thing for you. Did you happen to watch the vignette that took place prior to this match?
Yes. Well, I kind of skipped through it real quick. I didn't pay a ton of attention. I'll be honest.
Yeah. So no, that's fine. And Jeff, we all of us here at the Payoff appreciate your honesty, but
we don't watch all 16 hours of wrestling every week. Sorry that I needed to get that off my chest.
Oh my God. So there's a doctor that's in this, like, I guess it was Ricky Steamboat's doctor because of the throat or whatever. The guy's got his like white doctor coat on and he's got a bare chest with his hair sticking out. So I'm guessing this is like a wrestler. He looks like a pro wrestler. He looks like an 80s jobber and he's like pretending to be a doctor. I mean, it's just great. I just noticed that this morning. So go back and watch it. There's your little hidden gem.
That's right. Yep. It's worth it.
So we've covered the build. We know what's going on. I think we have a lot to talk about during this match. So I think we are about to jump into it. Does that sound good?
Let's get it. Let's get that ding, ding, ding. Tell us when to go, buddy.
So here's the deal. We're gonna start this at the 1 hour and 47 mark of WrestleMania 3 on the WWE Network. Again, 1 hour and 47 mark. When you hear the ding, 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 that's when we're gonna hit play. If you're just watching the match, it's right when it starts at the beginning when they're both in the ring. So with that being said, it's time for the payoff.
Oh, it's time for the payoff.
All right, Jeff, here we are. The Macho Man in the ring. Liz taking the glasses, taking off the headband, looking like a savage, man. Look at Randy. And those are some of my favorite tights that he wore too. That's kind of that iconic pink with the yellow. I don't know why. It was always just one of the more iconic ones.
I love that you're paying attention to them, and I'm watching the lovely Miss Elizabeth and exit the ring, and so that's all right. We've all got our loves. So yeah, we talked about it a little bit, like the planning of the match. I had read, and I don't know where what you found on this one, but it was literally weeks where they were laying out and planning this match.
Oh yeah.
And they were doing it in-ring work. Like, this was not so many times we hear about, what's happening nowadays of, matches being literally like the script being thrown out at noon or, look at the back hair. Oh yeah. George.
Dude, that back hair reminds me of my best man, Dave. Dude. One of these like college football trips we go on, we're gonna like wait till he like passes out from drinking and is exhausted. We're gonna tie him to the bed and we're gonna shave it off.
It's like the what was it, the 40-year-old virgin? Like, that's the way to do it. Yep. So
yeah, we send him that meme a lot.
Yeah, sure. So this is one of the for weeks and weeks they were planning this, and you just like nowadays, yeah, like I said, it's like 2:00 and the script's getting thrown out and they're rewriting it. Which, and even on a week where we don't have something, the unspoken by WWE coronavirus happening, like, we've got these things where, they're still throwing the script out. But this one, just imagine, at some point going to, Macho Man and saying, hey, whatever you've been planning over the last couple of weeks, you don't get to do that. Like,
but think about this, right? So you talk about how this had a 3-month build, but here's the reality of things is that they do the angle where he crushes his larynx or whatever. And then there's a couple interviews back and forth. So when we think 3-month build in current WWE product, that means that most weeks, if not every week, you have to do something, right? Like Edge and Randy Orton, they're having this wonderful build right now for their WrestleMania match, but every week someone's talking, something's happened. So by the time we get to the match, the build, will have been, 2 months or whatever, but it's going to be probably 8 or 10 different segments. Whereas this 3-month build may have been, 2 or 3 interviews or angles. So to stretch it out, you have to fill so much more TV time now.
Do you think, and this is just a thought I've had as we're kind of sitting here watching this match, and already a lot of back and forth, a lot of technical work, both men getting a little offense in, but Steamboat kind of starting to take over a little bit here. A back hair angle, you got to love that. So do you think the current, I say pay-per-view model, which, whatever you want to call it, or network model of shows, do you think it hurts this storytelling? Where you
no. I think it helps, because if you're going to have this much TV, then there has to be the blow off pay-per-view you're building to every month. That's my concern with AEW is it's can you do 12 TV shows to do a pay-per-view, 12 more TV shows? It's right. If I'm going to sit through 4 Raws, then I better, get a damn ladder match or a Hell in the Cell or a Money in the Bank or something. Otherwise, I'm just going to lose interest, right? You've got to be building something. So, yeah, I think you have to have those monthly pay-per-views, no question.
See, and I think it's odd. And so I actually disagree, because I think this is how it used to be back then, is we had these matches where you didn't have these monthly pay-per-views. And it feels like, and you and I have discussed it, it's less than, every 30 days sometimes. Some months there's 2-3 events. It feels like it's just insanity. And so, and we've gone over the, how much product there is to take in and things like that. But this is one of those, and I think that there could be so many times we hear about it too, this story is just continuing. And so I think you just can't have it both ways. And even, it's how much longer is this going to go on? Or, we can already tell, they're going to do this match again next time, but it's going to be no disqualification. And so, for a while there, they had they announced they were doing the no rematch for titles, which that's kind of already gone out the window a little bit sometimes. But, I do wish they had actually stuck to that rule, because I don't think that should be a thing. I think AEW is doing that a little bit better. But yeah, it's just one of those where it's tough to, like we kind of said in the opening, they do one thing and we're not happy, and then they change it up and do something else and we're still not happy. So, we're just going to keep complaining about it too, but that's okay.
Have you seen these shots of Liz that they've been putting on?
Yeah, I've been paying attention. Don't you worry.
So you know how Randy's obviously knocked for being overprotective of her?
Yes.
Well, guess what? I wouldn't have let her out of my sights either.
Right. So to get to the action a little bit, we've got the classic. So here's the classic photo and kind of image that everybody sees. Steamboat giving just a really hard chop, and now Macho Man.
He's got that overhead chop. Whatever, his way of punching was always so iconic. It was different.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where, he got out of the ropes here, and so Macho kind of sneaking back up on him again. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, that classic image is one we're so used to. And this has been a lot of really good action to this point, or, there's been a lot happening. So right away, right back into the arm drag and kind of taking him down, and then right back off the ropes. Even that looked a little sloppy, but it still worked quite a bit. And so, you figure too, these guys just going through the motion, you wonder kind of what number they're on at this point. Are they on 36 or 35? Boy, that was a crazy knee right there. Randy or Savage just to the back of Steamboat. That just looked rough. So yeah, it's one of those where, I think that this match right now, just a lot happening, which is great.
So as a fan, do you care that they planned this out move for move?
I don't. I think that, at this day and age, I've said it before, I always try and put myself in kind of what was happening at this time. And so back at this time, fans would have had no clue about that. Wrestling still, it's still real to me. Dan.
I wish I had no clue about any of this stuff. I wish dirt sheets didn't exist. I wish I didn't know any of the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, you and me both. And and we've gone at length about...
Dude, that's a pretty stiff... Look at that. So he gives them the knee to the back, puts them over the guardrail. They just didn't do stuff like that back then.
And that is the so for those of you who may or may not be watching, this is the classic steel like slatted guardrail. This is not the days of today like padded rail. I appreciate George Animal Steel checking on Steamboat. He got flipped over that railing and now kind of dragging him over the guardrail to kind of get him back in the ring. Great job of selling on this one too.
Didn't love his involvement in the match though.
I don't think it was definitely necessary. It's one of those, but I get like why they kind of, that was the storyline they were trying to go with. And so that was okay. And so, just one of those. So I know you had put it out online to someone.
Oh, hold on. Okay. Savage on the top rope, double axe handle. God, I loved when he used to do that. I love that. Again, you didn't see stuff like this back then. Just that felt like he was in the air forever, bombs away. Like double axe handle. Sometimes he does it, with the railing involved. I just love that move.
So many of those moves too. Like you don't see that move very often, and when you do, it's just not a big deal. Like how he sets it up, like that long kind of pose. On the
means
corner,
something.
Yes, and you and I've discussed that of make it mean something. And so going back up top again, trying to go for it again and got it. And so it's quick, but even just that little bit of him like putting his hands up, over his head, and most of you should be familiar with just that kind of move that he does. It's just one of those where, kind of seeing how he does that, it gets you invested.
Do you like Randy Savage better as a heel or a babyface?
I like him better as a heel. I think some people just are inherently better one way or the other, and I think he was much better as a heel personally.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I tend to like him better as a babyface, but he was great as both.
I think that's the beauty of wrestling. So as I was going to say, you put it out online, I think, or you were having an interaction with one of our fans not too long ago in regards to the Mount Rushmore of wrestling.
Let's save it for after the show.
You want to save it for after? All right.
Because I'll talk through this entire match about that.
Okay. Well, we'll get there. All right. That's fine. And so, kind of looking at these, and when you were a kid, and I think you were definitely the bigger Hulk Hogan mark, was, what would you put as like the two of this era that defined it for you? Because for me, it was like Hogan and Macho, actually. Some people might like Steamboat, some people might like Warrior, but who's the two that you associate with this era of wrestling?
Dude, for me, it's Hogan and Savage. Warrior's third.
Yeah, it is for me too. And it feels weird. Like some of the people were leaving off the list at this point because like Andre, and you're leaving off Ric Flair, and you're leaving off Steamboat, which I say leaving off, it doesn't mean that they're not great at what they do. It's just, it's not where my brain goes first every single time. So big flip outside of the ring here by Steamboat. Yeah, and so Steamboat getting that second win and throwing Savage feet straight up in the air over the top rope. Elizabeth just looking distraught, like unsure of what's happening. Just great selling of what's happening. Absolutely.
I mean, she was so good at it.
Oh, so many of them were. And I think there's some even now, like some nowadays that do a good job, like that manager valet role. They do a good job of it, but she's one that, I just always associate her as, so much of that and kind of what I envision. So over Earl Hebner there for the hitting Macho in the head. Oh, and so foot on the rope, of course, going to stop the count.
So many of these false finishes.
Yeah, and so that's something we haven't. So the false finish. So it was a big point, kind of one of the things I was reading of. Steamboat has actually had interviews where he has talked about like his thought on the false finish and why it was so good. You and I have talked about false finishes on this show before and why it's so important. It wasn't a huge thing, like it happened, but they really put it in the spotlight a lot. And just like that quick, and you and I said like a great wrestler can be made or broken by, how close to that 2.999 are they kicking out at?
Yep.
And I think it's just so important. And so you don't see that move anymore. So that was the Macho. Oh, that was an interesting move too. Macho holding onto the ropes as Steamboat's trying to get the roll up. And so it's very rare to see that. And then Savage actually, once he got the roll up, kind of clapping his legs on Steamboat, which we don't see that very often. A lot of technical work right now too. Steamboat.
If you watch them, they just keep moving. They never stop moving during this match.
Which I think that's interesting. And at no point too, and I know like it's a kind of argument or, against AEW that we hear a lot of times of like it's too telegraphed the spots they're setting up. Like at no point do you see these guys like waiting around for someone to do something.
This looks like an athletic competition, not a gymnastics meet.
Right. Yeah.
These two look like they're having, kind of a traditional wrestling mat, like maneuvers. It looks believable. It looks athletic. And they just don't stop. They just keep going.
And so that was nonstop. That was about probably 5 or 6 roll-ups in about a 2-minute period right there, with them just trying to get the upper hand on each other. So Steamboat, there's a no-sell by Savage. That was good.
At this time, there may have not been 5 guys on the roster that could wrestle this match.
No, and especially a match of this length. I think I have not done a ton of research to kind of see like average match lengths at this time, but like these got a 15 minute match or so, and these guys are going at it, and they're nonstop.
Jeff, the one WrestleMania we covered, and I can't remember which one it was. I want to say it might have been WrestleMania 6. Do you remember me reading the matches? There were like 12 matches, and 2 of them went 10 minutes or more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we talk for a minute? We don't want to skip over the incredible sell by Earl Hebner.
I know, but I hated a ref bump in this match. It didn't need it.
Yeah, it didn't need it. Again, over the hands, the camera flashes.
Bombs away, elbow drop.
And no ref to count it. And so, yeah.
Is that the best elbow drop in the history of the business?
I think so.
Jeff, if you didn't say yes, I was about to stop this right now.
I was going to say
the payoff would have ended if you told me CM Punk did a better elbow drop than the Macho.
And my hesitation, because I was thinking of some of the people that have tried to replicate it.
CM Punk did it. Shawn Michaels did it.
And so for those,
does Bailey do it? Who else?
So Bailey did it. And so for those of you at home, Savage now has the ring bell that he has grabbed. Of course, we don't see a ring bell spot nowadays. We're missing that. George Animal Steel has grabbed it from him, but Macho's still trying to get it back into the ring going for it. So I think I read that Bailey was doing it. It was her move. George Animal Steel knocking Macho off the top rope now. And so he was she was using it, but she had to stop using it because Io Shirai had a better, Kairi Sane had a better elbow. So,
and there you go. There's the finish. Steamboat gets it. This place is going nuts. Title change. New Intercontinental Champion. Liz looks distraught.
So you've got of course, Steamboat just winded, and that was nonstop. Like that was a very quick 14 minutes. So
here, instant reaction. If this match took place on pay-per-view now, would it have held up?
I think because of the action, yes.
1,000%. That was the biggest thing is we went back and watched this. I was curious about, like, was it good in the time or would it be good now? I don't know if it would have gotten 5 stars or whatever now, but dude, if this match took place, 2 comparable guys in today's era, I think you'd go, holy shit, that was a great match.
And there isn't a ton of super high flying like spot fest. They was just great wrestling. That's all that was needed. That's all you needed to do, and that was great.
Yeah. It was funny before we jump in the aftermath, just a couple of, quick things I want to talk about that I had here in my notes was at one point, Jesse Ventura talked about the over the top rope, how it should have been a disqualification. I don't think they were calling it that tight. Remember at that time, like WCW, that was like an automatic disqualification, throwing someone off the top rope. And I think that lasted for a long time. I don't know if they weren't really enforcing it here, but he alluded to it. I totally forgot about that rule.
It's just one of those things. Yeah. So of course, and the classic rolling out of the ring in the tiny ring cart, can't overlook that one. So, yeah.
So if Savage is the best elbow drop of all time, which he obviously is, who's second best?
Second, like right now, I'd give it to Kairi Sane because I followed her for a long time and her doing that, her elbow. And so I think she's definitely the best. So it's second to him, but yeah.
It's just amazing though how good Savage's was every time. Right. It was like he was in the air forever. It's just kind of the way he held it. God, I loved it.
Right. Absolutely. So
I also noticed the Marble ad. I forgot about cigarette ads and how that used to be a thing. So I laughed about that.
That was absolutely.
Probably some people listening to this are too young to ever even remember that cigarette ads existed.
Yeah.
The big Marlboro billboards and stuff. They had a huge sign in the arena.
Or that they did exist, yeah. So, all right, we want to wrap this up, Tom, get to the aftermath?
Yeah, let's...
lots to talk about, yeah.
I know. So let's jump into the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
Welcome back, as always. Appreciate it. Great matchup. You got Macho Man Randy Savage against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, WrestleMania 3. Just really good stuff. So we talked about it a little bit, Tom, but, Tom, just kind of, quick reaction to that match, Tom.
It holds up, right? I mean, I think that's my big takeaways. I've seen this match a number of times over the years, but now that we're doing this show and we've been watching a lot of wrestling and a lot of different matches, that was my biggest thing. Was this a good match in the late 80s, or was this a good match in any era? And the answer to me definitively is this is a great match in any era. I love the style. To me, again, to your point, Jeff, they're not setting up spots. This isn't some gymnastics meet. It was just two guys that were in a confrontation, in a wrestling match. And dude, they moved the entire time. There probably weren't five guys that worked this card that could have had that type of match. I just thought it was awesome. What about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think it's the fact that it was just nonstop the entire time. And I think that's why it kept me hooked. And, I didn't know what was going to happen. And that many times, we know the ending now, but if we were in that arena with all the disputed 97,000 fans, it's just one of those where I would hope that we would be hooked too. And there was a lot too, like this match in a lot of ways for a lot of people, depending on who you talk to, it was the match of the night. It stole the show over Hogan and Andre.
Well, that's the classic argument, though. It's you had the match, which was this one, and you had the moment, which was Hogan Andre. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other, worse than the other. It's two different things. One's an attraction in a moment. The other is a wrestling match. And that's the beauty of pro wrestling is you want this to be like a variety show. You want to have a little bit of everything. We have these IC wrestlers that are the wrestlers title, right? And then you tandem that with the heavyweight program, which was at the time these big, bulky, larger than life characters. And that's what was fun about it to me. Now I don't like it because everything's so blended, right? 1 minute Daniel Bryan's the world champion. Next minute he's Intercontinental champion. 1 minute Seth Rollins is the world champion. Then he's U.S. champion. I mean, how many guys have held all these belts and just interchangeably? There's no natural progression throughout the promotion anymore. None of the belts mean much of anything. They're just all random straps. Agree, disagree?
Well, and this is interesting because one of the little factoids on this one, and so this is one of those questions or kind of comments for people at home and random facts we throw in here. This is actually, while the Intercontinental belt had been around for a long time, this was actually the first time that the belt was exchanged, like that these two, between anybody really, that it changed hands at a TV or publicized event. Every time it had changed hands before this, it was always at a house show. And so you had people that had it for a very long time. It was Don Morocco, Tito Santana, Greg Valentine had it for a little, actually. Tito Santana won it back again. And so that's Randy Savage actually had this belt because he won it at a house show back in February of 1986. He held this belt for actually over a year, which is when Steamboat beat him this March of 1987. And so it was all house shows up to this point, Pat Patterson being the first person to have the belt. And then after this, it's just that you had, of course, a lot of people since. And I'm with you, though. So to your question, though, I agree with you. You and I both feel there's too many belts right now. And that also, I don't know how to fix that though. But then also, like, we can't always sit here and say who is the champ of every belt right now. And I just don't think that's right. And I think like using belts to elevate certain guys and kind of giving that prestige. And every couple of years, I feel like we get we're going to bring back the prestige to the Intercontinental title or something like that. Somebody wins it, but then it's hot shotted and it's gone. I think it was Dean Ambrose did it for a little while. Yeah,
Cena with the U.S. title.
I always enjoy an open challenge. I think the open challenge is a fantastic thing. But use the belts for those types of things, not just a guy that has it. So, yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know. So, okay. So aftermath about this one, ready to get into it and some of the factoids and whatnot. So, it talked about it a little bit in regards to, what was happening with, in the ring and kind of got, the being pushed off the top rope and the small package for the win. And like I've already said, this was the first time that the belt actually changed hands at an event right like this. And of course, like some people treat it as this is one of the greatest matches ever, like kind of even going, it's their top 5. It is their Mount Rushmore of matches, even overshadowing Hogan and Andre during this card. So, what happened to both of our competitors in this one? So it was actually Steamboat. The kind of story goes that Steamboat actually asked for some time off after this. It didn't sit well with management because they wanted him to win the belt and then, continue defending it and being that guy that
you had to work the house shows. I mean, if you were going to be the Intercontinental Champion, you had to headline the B house show and work like 8 matches a week.
Right. And so he had to keep doing that. And so it was actually, the story is it was actually one of his firstborn that he wanted to, have that and be that person. And so he actually only held the belt for 65 days. And he actually dropped it to show favorite here, the Honky Tonk Man, who we've talked about a lot in different stories and things like that. But he lost it. It was just a random kind of superstars match where he dropped it. And Honky Tonk actually held it for over a year. So kind of, crazy to think about how that could have played out if Steamboat held that title the whole time. Like, where would those guys have been? Like, what would have happened? And so, of course, the kind of behind the scenes stuff, some of the things I was reading and kind of looking up was that he still never really got that true push. He came back. It was actually 1987, that November. It's Survivor Series, excuse me. And so, but it's, everything I was kind of reading was still that, management still wasn't happy with him leaving. And so that's why he was never really pushed and he himself.
And Bruce talked about it on his podcast a week or two ago. And it was the same deal. They're like, we just couldn't count on him. The guy didn't want to work a full-time schedule. He had some issues. So what are you going to do? Make him world champ? I mean, they just couldn't count on him to be, a prominent player. And he left not that long after.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's one of those. And even Steamboat himself has said, like, they overshadowed that match. And so Savage, though, of course, having a little bit better of a career at this point, like up to this point and then moving forward, he actually won the King of the Ring tournament. It was 1987 that same year. And so he had that. And so he was also still getting cheered even though he was playing that heel angle, and so almost like reminiscent of a little bit of a Stone Cold type thing. So interesting how that played out. But you had some kind of back and forth here. It was Honky Tonk was saying that he was the greatest Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of all time. And so the two of them had a feud, which actually endeared Savage to the crowd. And so, it helped a little bit of credibility. And so, with him and kind of what he was doing. And so, Savage wasn't able to beat the Honky Tonk Man. So even putting him over a little bit, there was some involvement with the Hart Foundation and kind of Jimmy Hart, of course. And like, the involvement in that level. And so it's just one of those, and this is when, of course, you're starting to get into the mega powers, of course, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and, the Survivor Series with these different guys. So just a lot of different things, like how big these things played up. And of course, the WrestleMania 4 match as well too. So just a lot of different things happening where Savage was then able to eventually, go on to face Hogan as well too. And so just one of those things, just a lot happening, good stuff. And so exciting. But yeah, so Tom, that's kind of the aftermath, excuse me. Do you have any other thoughts or anything on any of that, or get us into some of the reviews and things we found?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's a crime that they didn't have a rematch at WrestleMania 4. Now, I understand, look, Savage had to be the good guy, so he had to go through a bunch of monster heels. I understand that, but, the way the brackets were, I mean, it should have been that Savage Steamboat wrestled at that show, and they just had a great match. Savage got his win back, and they could have shook hands afterwards, and it would have just helped. So I can't believe they avoided doing that match. I think it's an absolute crime. I'll fast forward way, way, way down the line in terms of Ricky Steamboat. That hit comeback that he had where he was part of that 3-on-1 match against Jericho, and then he wrestled 1-on-1 versus Jericho the following month. That might be a good one for us to cover next month because it's part of that kind of post-WrestleMania matches. So maybe we put that on the agenda because that was just a really random comeback, but they had an awesome, awesome match. I believe it was a Backlash, the show after WrestleMania that year. So I thought that was pretty cool. Look, man, Randy Savage, he had the best match at WrestleMania 3. He had the best match at WrestleMania 4 against DiBiase. He had the best match at WrestleMania 5 against Hogan. He had the best match at WrestleMania 7 against The Warrior. He had the best match at WrestleMania 8 against Ric Flair. So, before Shawn Michaels was Mr. WrestleMania, Randy Savage was WrestleMania. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but, I was watching this match this morning as we were prepping for it. And, I'm just sitting there. I'm like, in the overall scheme of professional wrestling, Randy Savage is underrated. Okay. And I mean that. He's just underrated. You hear Mount Rushmore and it's like, Hogan, Austin, Rock, Flair, you hear these names. Well, whoa, hold on a second here. To me, if Hogan and Austin have to be on it, okay, fine. You want to put Flair third, okay. But man, Savage to me is like 3, maybe 4. I just think he had so many great matches. He was a great babyface. He was a great heel. Some of his moments with Elizabeth were incredible. He had these great WrestleMania matches that, including this one. I don't know, man. I am a massive, massive Randy Savage mark. I think the guy was super underrated. And, I don't know why I thought of it, but I was just like, to me, as far as pro wrestling goes, he is absolutely a better talent than The Rock. Promos, look, heel, baby face, in-ring work, everything, man.
Well, and I think this is one of those where, too, even we overlooked it because this is the first, after we've been doing this for, 8 months or whatever, like this is the first Macho Man match that we've discussed. And so we've overlooked it ourselves too. But, and that's when I think you brought up the interesting point. I remember Macho Man promos more than I remember his in-ring work. And so I agree with you. I think his promo work was some of the best that's out there because of, like, that's just what I remember. Like, I remember him standing there with Mean Gene and, of course, the flowing robes and things like that, and cutting that promo. And everybody, has their Macho Man voice and things like that because that's just how they associate him. That's what they know him from. And so, it's hard to argue your point of him being, if not better than, just as good as The Rock.
At my bachelor party, I wore a Macho Man shirt in Vegas, like Friday afternoon. And for about an hour, I insisted on only speaking in the Macho Man voice.
Sometimes you just gotta, you gotta step up to the plate and do what's necessary. So
absolutely. I love the guy. And I feel like because we lost him too soon, Warrior's little comeback and doing the Hall of Fame, he's a little fresher in our mind, and we still have this Warrior Award because Savage, a couple things. Savage left for WCW, right? So he's not in a lot of those, WWF moments. He didn't have to come back like Hulk Hogan and wrestle more matches. He didn't get to give the Hall of Fame speech. He hasn't been back as a legend. We lost him too soon. So maybe that is why we sometimes forget about him a little bit. But man, the robe, the music, the gimmick, the promos, all the stuff he did, dude, he is so underrated.
Well, and he did he did a long time in W, but you're right. He never did come back truly after
ever. Nothing.
Or WCW.
He never made up with Vince.
Between that and then he actually had that small run in TNA too.
Yeah.
And
do you know how he made up with Hogan after all those years? They were sitting in the same doctor's office together. And they just randomly bumped into each other. This was like weeks before his death.
Yeah.
They randomly ran into each other.
Which is crazy to think about. But yeah.
Yeah, you imagine you're sitting in the doctor's office, Hulk Hogan walks in, you're like, oh my, holy shit. And then, 5 minutes later, the Macho Man walks in. I wouldn't even know what to do.
No, like just randomly waiting for your test. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd look like I, had like an emergency because I'd be sitting there holding on to my chair, like shaking and sweating and just giggling.
Not knowing what to do. Right.
I don't know what's wrong with this guy, but let's get him back there.
Right. Let's keep doing this. So
he's just marking out.
It's how it looks. It's fine. Yeah. So, okay. So a couple quick go.
What do you have for us? I'm excited to hear this.
A couple quick reviews. I know we've kind of been digging a little bit since we've been kind of working on the episode here. And so Dave Meltzer, Tom's favorite dirt sheet writer, gave
favorite medical expert these days.
Yeah. Gave it 4.5 stars, which I think we can probably agree, if not that, a little bit higher. Yep, absolutely. So we've got that. And then I think one other kind of interesting write-up I saw was kind of like a retrospective article, but I thought it was just kind of good here, was that in front of the largest indoor crowd ever assembled for a sporting event, these two veteran wrestlers managed to upstage the main event, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, in a match that has only grown in reputation in the years that have followed. Leading up to WrestleMania 3, an intense feud between Steamboat and Savage was festering for 6 months as both wrestlers made claims for the Intercontinental belt. Their previous fights were bloody with plenty of high-flying activity, but no one could have been prepared for this stunning culmination. So,
interesting.
Tom, what are your you want me to go first? You want to go first? What do you want to do?
I was just gonna say, as you say, like their previous fights were bloody and stuff. It just makes me think so many of the best matches in the history of wrestling are not recorded on video.
Right.
Isn't that crazy to think? I remember I think it was Bret Hart's book. He's like, oh, the best match I had in my career was against Undertaker, in Germany. Yeah, it wasn't on TV, right? I'm like, wait, what? Like, how's that possible? I know there's a good Bret Hart, Ricky Steamboat match, Boston Garden. That might be available on video. But again, some of these incredible matches, they're like, yeah, they got taped over, they don't exist or whatever. It's just so wild to think about, but yeah, this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just one of those where kind of seeing this. So I will go first in giving my score. I will say that my score, I'll give this an 8. I think it's, it has more than stood up to the test of time. I think that just what they gave us in the ring was just absolutely top notch. And so, and while I think that it was underrated probably a little bit, I say underrated in the sense that I don't think no one could have seen just how big it would become nowadays. And so, I can't really balk at any of it. I'm not going to give it any higher than that. Just, I'm just not, but, I think 8 is a pretty solid score for kind of what we saw and kind of how it has stood up to the test of time. Your thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, we're on the same lines. I liked it just a touch more. It sounds like I had this at an 8.5. Look, the pros are it was a phenomenal match in any era. At the time, it was so cutting edge. It was so much better than anything else that WWF was producing in terms of in-ring work. The higher spots were higher. The pace was faster. It was better wrestling. It had a pretty good storyline. Why is it not a 10? The crowd wasn't going crazy. didn't have an incredible storyline. It had a good storyline. I didn't love the ref bump. I didn't love George the Animal Steel involved. So there's a couple minor little things that I'd say keep it from being perfect, but still just incredible. You know how I felt about Hogan and Andre. That to me was better in terms of what we call our payoff score. But again, this was still awesome. Just a really, really cool match. And again, it's fun that it holds up the test of time, because there's other matches we watch, not to pick on the, Michaels Razor ladder match, but man, given all the things we've seen in terms of ladder matches, it's hard to really look at that and be like, man, that's a 5-star great classic. I mean, I understand it was at the time, but given what we've seen, it doesn't really hold up. It just looks a little, blah. It's still a good match though. But this one, man, this holds up. It's really cool that that's the case.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So, yeah, just great stuff. I think that it's hard to kind of overlook though, and this is one of those where if, you should put it on your kind of list of, if you had a match that, you had to show to someone, this is that match. Like, this should be one of those that you're going back and showing people, like, this is one of those, because it was, and we say it was both the match of the year from both Pro Wrestling Illustrated and the Wrestling Observer, which rightfully so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So Tom, final thoughts on this one?
Dude, no final thoughts. Fun match. I'm gonna miss covering all these WrestleMania matches. We're coming to the tail end of it, so this is one of our last ones.
Deep on the road, yeah. Whether it's going to be an interesting WrestleMania, but you can't say we're not still on the road. So that's the exciting thing. So.
Yeah, and you know what? Regardless, it's going to be fun to see what ends up being of WrestleMania, and it's different. And hopefully, all the performers stay healthy, and they're able to perform, and we're able to be sports entertained, as Jeff likes to say.
Of course. So, and this is one of those too, for those of you, of course, that, want to go out there and kind of see what these guys are doing. Ricky Steamboat is on Twitter, of course. And so he can be found. He is just real Steamboat. And then, of course, Macho Man, not around anymore with us, but Lanny Poffo, his brother, he is just at Lanny Poffo. He's a motivational speaker nowadays. He's very active on Twitter as well, too. So both two guys, out there kind of promoting the messages and kind of doing that stuff. So didn't say it at the top of the show, but that's okay. And so the line that everybody loves here, just subscribe to the Payoff wherever you listen, give us those 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, and spread the word about the show. And as Tom did say it, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, at Payoff Pod. We're going to be very active these next couple of weeks, especially leading up to WrestleMania, because, we're kind of just sitting around. So we want to engage with you guys. We want to, kind of interact with you. And so 2 of our fans could admit to as well, too. We kind of secretly send out some of our koozies to some of you as well, too. And so we love interacting with you and sharing your opinion. And so we're okay with that. So good, bad, all that stuff. That's the best part of wrestling. So with that, Tom, you want to take us home? Get us out of here?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for joining us on the Payoff